like to talk a little bit about our European martial arts traditions and why most people don't know anything about them. European culture is oftentimes based upon innovation and technological advancements, and we see the development of weaponry and martial arts through the course of history in Europe. And as each new method and means of being efficient in achieving your political ends through force came along, the old ways fell away. There isn't a history or a tradition of ancestor worship in Europe. There isn't a history and tradition of holding on to the old ways. Europeans tend to be forward-thinking, and they tend to think about what we can do better tomorrow. And so oftentimes the martial traditions of the past fall into disuse and eventually are forgotten. Pieces still exist today and are practiced. Boxing is a Western martial art. Greco-Roman wrestling, Olympic wrestling is a Western martial art. Fencing is a Western martial art. Archery, well, that's a worldwide martial art, but certainly when people think archery, they often think of one of two things: the English longbow or the Mongol shortbow from horseback. So we saw the development of Western martial arts right up to probably the most current Western martial arts, which is demonstrated with firearms. That is our modern martial tradition. Europeans have developed martial arts to the point now where we split the atom to achieve our aims. Right? Nuclear weapons is the supreme development of European martial arts. I don't like to talk about that. I like to talk about our traditions, our martial traditions, which are continuous and come from us, in fact, from Neolithic times right up to our current study. So people talk about unbroken traditions of martial arts. There is an unbroken tradition of Western martial arts from the Neolithic to today. And we're going to pick a spot in the 14th century to focus on. And the reason that at the Academy of European Medieval Martial Arts we picked the 14th century is because at that time there was a correlation of forces that came together to allow a person who was well skilled in these arts to set them down in words and pictures. So there were books written to record the art. And those who have an understanding of some of the basics of the art can understand these books. For us, it was an odyssey that started 15 years ago when we first came into possession of some of the original manuscripts. And AEMMA, we made it one of our mandates to collect and disseminate this information to the world. We have on our website one of the largest collections of European martial art manuscripts available. Now, since we started collecting a lot of these libraries that were closed and weren't sharing this information have subsequently shared this information, and the online world is filled with information about Western martial arts traditions. There is no reason for them to be any further forgotten or not practiced. The information is there, it's available. When we started, it was a little harder. We had to get the information, we had to learn to understand the obscure dialect of Italian, translate, interpret, and create curriculums from this information, and we have done so. The armored combat that everybody wants to see is actually a small part of what we do. Probably the most advanced thing that we do, because once you start putting on armor, then it's difficult to maintain sensitivity to your companion, and your skills have to be relatively developed because you can't see and you can't feel. So you must be a well-developed martial artist. We study the art is complete in that it has all aspects of combat: empty-handed, offense and defense without weapons, defense against weapons while empty-handed, the use of short, small weapons, knives and daggers, the use of swords, the use of spears and poleaxes, and finally the major source that we study, Torum by Fiore Levery, written in 1410, concludes with all of these things on horseback, which of course is not thanks. So when you add a second sentient creature that you must be able to control, as well as do all these things, you're talking about how to develop martial arts. So I wanted to do also a couple of demonstrations with respect to the efficiency of armor. Many people have misconceptions about medieval weapons, medieval European weapons. Where's my longsword? So this is an example of a longsword. How much do you think it weighs? Anyone?
50 pounds.
As much as the planet. This particular version weighs about 2.5 to 3 pounds. And this is a typical longsword from the 14th century. With this weapon, armed as I am, I could probably cut all of you badly before anybody could stop me. Right? I could, this weapon can easily remove a limb, can easily take off.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Easily take off, in fact, with one cut, both your legs. Right? Both your legs. Yeah. He's safe. Arms, hands, heads of little trouble with this weapon. In Europe, other cultures had swords, of course, as well. But in Europe, in particular, because there was no shortage of high-quality materials in which to fashion swords, they were free to develop them to their most highest development. This is the 14th century longsword, the highest development of the handheld cutting weapon on the planet ever. Ever. Right? High-quality steel, double-edged, flexible, and tough. Right? You couldn't get better than this. After the 14th century, when gunpowder entered the battlefield, artillery first, then guns of the hand, and then rifles, and then machine guns. The use of this weapon and this equipment became redundant, and so discarded, forgotten. And fortunately, we had these books that were written, literally sitting on a shelf for 700 years, waiting for somebody to pull it off the shelf and take a look. And that's what we did. We redeveloped an effective system to teach these skills. When it comes to armor, people think, oh, well, you know, is it very good? Does it work? I can tell you that against all the weapons that I have arrayed here, what Mr. Ito is wearing is essentially proof from all of them. It would be very hard for me to cause him any damage. Even as lightly armed as I am, this being a sharp sword, is that a sharp sword? Okay. As I said, could cut a man in half. Armed as I am, I'm not afraid of this weapon. Right? He can hack at me all day, and he's not going to cut through this. Right? I might be a little bit scared of the point. Because if he burst one link, that would let the sword enter this far to my body. If he burst 2 links, it would let it go this far. And I'm not quite that thick yet. So, armor is very effective, very efficient. If you want to deal with the armed man, you have to, in fact, go back to basics. The weapons are of not much use. while he's working away trying to cut through my armor, I could be doing other things to him, such as throwing him to the ground, right? Or using, in fact, the most dangerous weapon to the armed man, which is the dagger. Okay? This weapon, because it is so small, right, can get to places where the armor isn't. You get to places where the armor isn't, and makes things very difficult for him. So when it comes to this degree of equipment, it really is more about wrestling than it is about the weapons. Now, David's fully armed. He has a full suit of harness on. He's protected with plate and with mail. And I could beat at him all day with this sword. And he doesn't even hurt me. Those are hard blows. And this is a common fallacy. Like, while I'm doing that to him, what do you think he can do to me? Right? Whatever he wants. He can disregard what I'm doing and kill me. Right? I'd really want a different weapon. Armed as lightly as I am, the spear would be a good toy, because I could keep him at bay. Right? I could stick it into a spot where the armor is light, and I could keep him away from me. And again, if I got through one link, it would go this deep. If I got through two, it would go that deep. If I got through three links, I could get it in this far. That would do it. Even better, the poleaxe. This weapon, of course, this is a training weapon made out of hard rubber and wood, but it basically maps to the shape of a real poleaxe. Designed specifically to defeat the man in armor. It looks vicious, but realistically, it is principally an aid to wrestling. Right? Certainly, if I bash him in the head, it might set him off a little bit. But principally, where I'm going to use this is to hook and push, right? To come into the leg or between and lever him to the ground, right? To hook with the fluke, turn him where his armor is weak, so I can then stab it into the spots where it's just mail and I might get through. Even better, if I could knock him to the ground, now I can use the point with the earth underneath him, and I might penetrate right through. Okay? With the earth under him, he's got nowhere to go, the point might get through. But, on the other side of that equation, he's not just going to let you do that. Now, he's wearing the equipment of a well-appointed man-at-arms. I'm wearing the equipment of a typical levy or infantryman of the period. My primary weapon might be, as Jean was wearing, might be a bow. Could be a crossbow. Could also be a spear as my primary weapon. These are my self-defense weapons. So when I lose those weapons and I have to deal with him, maybe I can stay alive using these weapons. But I got problems. Because I keep hitting him and he doesn't stop. I could do this all day. He's going to eventually kill me. Nothing works. I have to try something. that didn't work, and he was able to defend against that attack on the ground. I'm lightly armored, he's heavily armored. Every bit of him hurts me. This demonstration is an example of, where we can go with the study and practice of martial arts. All of us have interests and traditions, various places to start and finish in the arts that we choose to study speak to us personally. And this one speaks to me personally and provides me with, so far, 15 years of focus to my study. I do other things. Obviously, we all have our careers. But we have our passions and the reason why we get out of bed in the morning. And this is mine.